everybody, Brandon here, and it is the end of the year. Hello.
You want to be in the video?
Anyway, a lot of games came out in 2023, and the rest of my colleagues have been releasing their Game of the Year videos detailing their favorite games of the year. And now it's my turn. I actually found this year to be pretty difficult to actually order my rankings, so I'll put it out here right now. I'm not going to put a lot of stock into the actual order, except for what's at number 1. In general, these are just the top 10 games that I enjoyed in 2023 in somewhat kind of an order, but not really. So coming in at number 10 is a game that actually just recently came out, and that is Super Mario RPG. To be completely honest, I don't have a ton of experience with Super Mario RPG outside of this remake. I played the original game for the first time on Wii Virtual Console, which is something that Daniel also did, further proving that we are in fact the same person. Back when I played it on the Wii Virtual Console for the first time, I wasn't really much of an RPG guy. I played the Paper Mario games, as well as Mario and Luigi, but the more traditional format that this game took, as traditional as it can get, mind you, wasn't really for me. So for me, Super Mario RPG on the Nintendo Switch was a great way to really dive into this game, I guess for the second time, but really for the first time with heart, if that makes sense. It's a beautiful game. It takes all of those cute little sprites from the original Super Nintendo game and really polishes them up and makes them look how you would expect it to look in 3D with modern visuals. In addition to the beautiful music and the updated visuals, there have been some changes to combat that personally I like, but might be controversial. If you perfectly time an attack, you do splash damage to every enemy in the battle. In addition to that, if you perfectly time a guard, you don't take any damage at all. And as you perform action commands, this gauge will fill up, which is essentially your limit break, but it allows you to do a triple attack, which changes based on the combination of party members that you currently have, which I think is pretty neat. They have these really sick CG cutscenes that don't take up too much time, so they're cool to watch. They do a lot of damage, but they're not overpowered. They don't break the game, I don't think. That said, I do find this game to be a little too easy. I wish it was a little harder, had a little bit more bite. The new post-game content is harder, but it takes a puzzlier approach to combat, which, while cool, once you figured out the solutions to a lot of those fights, they're just kind of pushovers. But regardless, I'm glad that that new content was there. Coming in at number 9 is Remnant II. This is the sequel to Remnant from the Ashes, which is a procedurally generated cooperative 3D multiplayer shooter kind of dealio. I've never played the original Remnant, but my friends expressed interest in picking it up, and as you know, I like games like Monster Hunter. I like big cooperative multiplayer experiences, and that's what this was offering. There's all kinds of weapons, and there's different classes that you can take on. One of the things I found interesting is that you can have a main class, and then you can have a secondary class, and you can kind of combine their skills in interesting ways. And as you play through the game, you unlock more classes by doing some, albeit kind of obtuse things, but that's what makes Remnant kind of fun, is discovering this stuff. Every playthrough you have might be completely different from the last, so you're definitely encouraged to just keep playing through the game. Honestly, it was a big surprise for me, just because I didn't really know about it until it came out, but then I played it and I had a really good time. Coming in at number 8 is Metroid Prime Remastered. I love Metroid Prime. It's one of my favorite games on the GameCube. It was my introduction to Metroid as a franchise outside of Super Smash Bros. So no Metroid 1, no Metroid 2, no Super Metroid. This was it. And you know what? This is a great way to get introduced to the series. It's basically Super Metroid translated into a 3D environment, and that's cool. I hadn't really played first-person shooters before, and obviously this is a very different take on that, but having this kind of solitary, kind of creepy, and moody, cool first-person shooter adventure was a great way to get me interested. It's a very tightly put-together adventure. It takes about 10 hours your first time, I think, casually. But what I love about Metroid Prime Remastered is the fact that it's just gorgeous. This is what I remember the game looking like. And I've talked about this before. I do like remakes that reimagine the games a lot, like Final Fantasy VII Remake or even Metroid Samus Returns. But a faithful remake like this, or Super Mario RPG, also has value. This just put the game on a modern platform with modern control sensibilities that really appeal to me. Twin sticks plus gyro is perfect for Metroid Prime, and that's something you can do here. Also, it released at $40, which is great. First-party Nintendo games don't do that. The game still holds up, the music's still incredible. They didn't even touch the music, but I don't care. It's still good. Number 7, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. I'm not really the biggest fan of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but it was also my introduction to the series. I never really gave Xenoblade Chronicles, the original game, a proper fair shake before. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, on the other hand, is the gameplay that I've always wanted from this series. It's like taking a full MMO party like from Final Fantasy XIV, giving you access to all of those roles all at the same time, and letting you play the game the way you want to. And that's really cool. Because you have so many characters at your disposal, the number of abilities that each character has individually is a little smaller in scope, and for me, that's a plus. I'm not really a big fan of how the original Xenoblade Chronicles, you have this horizontal wheel that you're scrolling through to access your attacks. Not really the most intuitive way to do it. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a little closer to what they did with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as far as accessing your skills, and I think that's a big improvement. From a story perspective, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 base game is beautiful. It stands on its own, wonderful characters. It's my favorite story among the 3 games. However, if you're big into the Xenoblade Chronicles lore, you may have been left a little disappointed at how the game kind of approaches that aspect of its universe. Well, there's a reason they did that, because all of that stuff was saved for this. Future Redeemed is all of that fan service that you're looking for. But it also boasts original characters that I love, like Matthew, while also bringing back characters like Shulk and Rex. It's super self-indulgent, but you know what? It's earned it, and I love it for that. If you're a fan of the Xeno series, this was definitely made for you. So if you haven't played it, but you have played Xenoblade 3, you're doing yourself a disservice by not. Coming in at number 6 is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. This is the 2D Mario game I've been waiting for so many years. I love New Super Mario Bros. On DS. I even like the Wii game a lot. It just got tired for me at New Super Mario Bros. 2 and U, especially with them coming out within like months of each other. It was not a great idea, Nintendo. But Super Mario Bros. Wonder finally puts a fresh spin on 2D Mario, giving everybody so much character and life and love, being beautiful, allowing you to play as a large swath of Mario characters for the first time, which is super cool. Like Daisy. Daisy is playable in a 2D Mario game that's part of the main line. Yes, you can play as her in Super Mario Run, but this is a Nintendo Switch 2D Mario platformer adventure. That's sick, man! Listen, I could talk a lot more about Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but I have a review on the channel for that already that I would highly suggest you watch if you haven't. It would mean a lot to me. I worked really hard on it. Thank you so much. Coming in at number 5 is Final Fantasy XVI. Final Fantasy XVI is a game that I don't think quite gets the credit it deserves. There are things about it that I wish were different. I think the game is a little too long for its own good. Some of the side quest design is a little too similar to some stuff you find in Final Fantasy XIV, where you just go from character to character having conversations and nothing else really happens. That said, a lot of the side quests really flesh out the extended cast, and I really like that. Some of my favorite moments in the game probably come from some of the side quests. But enough about side quests. The main quest is really good. I love the character of Clive. I love the character of Joshua. I love Torgal and Jill and Sid. I could go on. I don't have a ton of experience in the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy VII was actually my first real attempt at playing a Final Fantasy game. Well, it got its hooks in me, so here I am playing Final Fantasy XVI when it first came out. I know the game gets a lot of criticism for not necessarily being an RPG at heart, but it's still a good game. It's an action game, but it's a good action game. The combat is very free-flowing. There's so many possibilities once you start unlocking some of the other iconic abilities. Early on in the game, it is pretty limited. If your impression is just from those first few hours, I understand why maybe it wasn't for you. But as the game goes on and Clive's abilities start expanding, the game just opens up. It gets really, really good. It also has a battle theme that I cannot get out of my head no matter what I do. It's honestly a real problem. Anyway, Ben Starr has suddenly become one of my favorite people on the planet. So Ben, if you're watching this, you're awesome as Clive. I love you and the rest of the cast of Final Fantasy XVI. Your game's great, and I'm so happy I got to play it. Coming in at number 4 is SpiderMan II. I'll admit, leading up to the release of SpiderMan II, I wasn't all that interested in it. And that's not because I'm not a Spider-Man fan. I loved Marvel's Spider-Man and Miles Morales. Both of those games are fantastic. But looking at all the other releases that were coming out this year and how, you know, there are a lot of sequels, but a lot of those sequels are fresh and different, while Spider-Man, as good as it is, just looked like Spider-Man. And then I played the game. And there's a lot of impressive stuff going on in that game that you might not realize until you've actually gotten your hands on it. I love how much faster web swinging is. Getting around the city at blazing speeds feels so cool. Combat is largely the same, but they made some adjustments to specifically the gadgets that I really liked. Instead of having this wheel of too many gadgets, like there were a lot of gadgets in the first Spider-Man game, and to be honest, I didn't use most of them. We have a more focused set of gadgets now, and I like the combat rhythm with that more, having a more limited scope. Some might look at that as a bad thing, but for me, I think it's trimming the fat, if that makes sense. The story is also really good. I love the interpretation of Harry a lot. His performance especially is really good. Just the entire lead up to the character of Venom I really enjoyed. The sections with Mary Jane I actually found to be a lot more enjoyable than in the first game. They're a little bit more compact, they're more focused, and Mary Jane has more at her disposal. I also like the A-B plot between Peter and, of course, Miles. Both characters kind of have their own style when it comes to being Spider-Man, and just getting to choose your favorite Spider-Man at any given time, swap between them, and just have a completely different Spider-Man experience is really neat. I'm very excited for whatever comes next for Spider-Man. The story's not quite over yet, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. Coming in at number 3 is a game that wasn't even on my radar until it came out, and that is Alan Wake 2. This game is awesome, man. I love survival horror games. I don't even know if I would call it survival horror, but it is a horror game. Kinda. In a way, it shares a lot of DNA with Resident Evil 4. You're limited on ammo and supplies, you have to conserve what you can. But the more interesting part for me is just the entire idea of this Remedyverse. The world is so cool and so interesting. The concept of the dark place isn't exactly concrete. We don't entirely understand how it works or even what it is. And that allows the narrative and visual teams to really just make the game super interesting. But I also really want to talk about Saga Anderson and her Mind Place and the case board system. As you're going through the game, you will obtain clues and information that will help Saga on her investigation of this whole situation happening in Bright Falls. There are multiple cases, some are side quest cases, but as you get information, she takes little pictures and puts them up on the case board, like a big murder board, essentially. And I just really like the way the game contextualizes information and turns the information gathering into a gameplay mechanic, kind of. But it gives the game a mechanical way for Saga to work through the mysteries. Once she starts putting pieces together, she will come up with new, theories or hypotheses about what's happening. She can cross-examine people in her mind, and that will lead her to gaining new information as well. It's just a really cool way to frame the whole thing, and I really like that. In addition to playing as Saga Anderson, you also play as Alan Wake, and when you're playing as Alan Wake, it is much more like Alan Wake 1. You're fighting shadows, you gotta use your light to make them vulnerable. He narrates the entire thing as you go through. It's campy, it's weird, it's kinda dumb at times, but in a way that I love. If you watched the Game Awards, you got to see that incredible live performance from the old gods of Asgard. That's what you can expect from a game like Alan Wake 2. That said, I don't think Alan Wake 1 holds up very well, but from a narrative standpoint, you absolutely need that context going into Alan Wake 2. The game will not fill in the holes for you. So play through it if you want, or maybe watch a recap on YouTube or something. Definitely get that knowledge before playing Alan Wake 2. But just enjoy it, man. It's a visually striking game. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love the characters, the performances. It's a really funny game at times. It surprised me a lot. Coming in at number 2 is Pikmin 4. I wasn't really a Pikmin guy leading up to this. I'd played Pikmin 1, I played Pikmin 3, I had not really touched Pikmin 2, but Nintendo re-releasing Pikmin 1 and 2 on the Switch, and essentially giving us the whole series minus Hey Pikmin, on the Switch just gave me more reason to dive in and try it out. So I played through Pikmin 1 fully, I think for the first, maybe second time. It's been a long time, I can't remember. I played through most of Pikmin 2. All of my Pikmin got wiped out in a cave and I got sad, so I moved on to Pikmin 3. I played through Pikmin 3 co-op with my friend Levi, and we just had a really good time playing through that together. We played it on extra spicy or ultra spicy or whatever. It just was a really fun experience. And then there's Pikmin 4. They brought the camera down to kind of over the shoulder instead of top down. You can still make the camera top down, but the game makes you feel even smaller with this new camera perspective. It allows them to take a new approach to the overworld design, spending a lot more time putting things in the background and kind of putting you in a space which I don't think Pikmin 1, 2, or 3 comes close to. We got new abilities like Ochi. Ochi is just a whole thing. He can do so much stuff. He can be the equivalent of 100 Pikmin by the time you're done upgrading him. You can ride on his back, which puts all of your Pikmin on his back, and you just go as one unit, which is super great. It's so nice to be able to move as a unit instead of finding out that 3 Pikmin got stuck, clipped on an edge or something, and you never notice, and then the day ends, and then they die. There's also a lot of content in this game. This is the longest Pikmin game, I think. It's pretty close to Pikmin 2. There's just a lot of stuff. The levels are really jam-packed. There's so much to see and do. There's a whole separate, secondary, smaller adventure where you get to play as Olimar, and that adventure kind of emulates Pikmin 1, which is really cool. I really like the process of gaining new gear and abilities. Just upgrading felt good, and that was built into the game in an interesting way. So if and when we get a Pikmin 5, I'd like to see that carried forward for sure. I'm a little disappointed that the game didn't have multiplayer in the same way that it did in Pikmin 3, but I understand because of how different Pikmin 4 is, and honestly, probably more technically demanding. So I'm willing to give it a pass, but I was a little bummed. The game culminates in a pretty amazing finale. It's worth seeing to the end. Absolutely worth playing to 100%. It's not that hard. It won't take you too long. By the time I was finished with Pikmin 4, I felt really satisfied. If it had gone on for 10 more hours, it probably would have overstayed its welcome. It finishes at the perfect time, leaving me with wanting just a little bit more. So I'm super excited for Pikmin 5, or Pikmin 4 if it gets DLC. The game is great. What more can I say? Coming in at number 1, it's weird. Like, this is the kind of game where I try to give myself every reason it shouldn't be number 1. But I can't help it. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is just that good of a game, and it meant that much to me. I'm a big Zelda fan. You can see elements of it in my background. Breath of the Wild was such an incredible experience. Fresh new take on Zelda, a fresh new take on the concept of an open world game. And because it was doing so much, it fell short in some areas for me. The story wasn't as grand and epic as it could have been. The finale was kind of bad, if we're being honest. Tears of the Kingdom rectifies every issue I had with Breath of the Wild. The Ultra Hand is so innovative. Being able to build things with as much freedom as the game gives you, it's honestly just so impressive. I found the shrines overall to be more fun, just because you got to play with building, but because there's building involved, in some ways they're even more breakable. I say breakable, but like, that's built into the game design, right? There's so many more ways to arrive at these solutions just because of the way the game is built, and that's so cool, man. Revisiting the same locations in Hyrule was such an interesting experience because so much time has passed in universe between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that every location you go to is quite a bit different than the last time you were there, so it was exciting. Playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom back-to-back would almost be like playing a light world, dark world, say Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time. But Tears of the Kingdom also has the stuff in the sky and an entire second map under the ground. It literally turned the map on its head. It's so cool, and they didn't even talk about that leading up to the game's launch. I jumped in a hole on launch night, expecting to see a couple things and then come back up and go back into the surface and start doing stuff. I spent like 4 hours down there, and I was like, it just keeps going! And eventually I found out it's an entire second map, and oh my god. I also really connected with the story. I love the new characters. The story is kind of sorrowful in a way, in a different way than Breath of the Wild. And it culminates in probably the best finale a Zelda game has ever had. Which is great, because Breath of the Wild's ending was just not good, man. It's just not. So in the end, I couldn't put any other game but Tears of the Kingdom on top. It's one of the best games I've ever played. So, that, it is what it is. But that's it. Those are my games of the year. If your favorite games aren't on my list, well, that's because it's my list. But I'm interested in hearing what your lists are. Please leave them in the comments below. Make sure to watch everybody else's Game of the Year videos, and stay tuned for our Game of the Year group discussion, which will be going up sometime in the next few days. Or if you're watching this late, you may have already listened to it. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your year. Thank you for showing us so much support this year. It really means a lot. I love you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in 2024. Bye now.